There we go. We are recording. I'm going to start by introducing me. So I'm Adam Quiney, and I'm here with Demi. I think I say your last name McConkey, right? Demi
Uh-huh.
McConkey.
Yes,
Like the
yes.
best last. I'm very envious of your last name.
No, it is a cool last name. I've only had it for 4 years, so I do like it too.
Oh, cool, nice. It's fresh and
Yeah,
shiny.
yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about sort of leadership and your experience on a leadership team I led.
Hmm.
And just to provide people watching some context, you just shared you've been sick for about a week. I actually injured my I think I injured my rib or some vital organ or something while lifting weights last week. So it's hard for me to take deep breaths. So
Ooh,
yeah, we're both
long
complete,
time.
yeah, complete disasters. So this will be the,
Awesome,
whatever
awesome.
gets created is going to be amazing. We
I
cannot
love
do
it.
this
I love it.
wrong.
Yes.
Um, okay, cool. So let me provide some background for everyone or anyone watching. The reason I wanted to put this together is because there's kind of two realms that I like to operate in. One is coaching, one is leadership. And while similar, they're different, they're distinct.
Hmm. Hmm.
And often I find leadership is a lot like, it's like things like maybe mediation or even I guess like creative endeavors where because we've all had to do some flavor of it at some point in our lives, like we've all been in an argument and then had to sort of mediate our way through that. And because we survived it and our lives are where we are and we relate to our lives as okay, we're like,
Hmm.
oh, I know what that is. I know how to do that. I have this
Hmm. Hmm.
understanding.
Hmm.
And so leadership's one of those things where everyone has a sense of what it is. They think they know, I already know leadership, or I know how that looks, or I know the flavor of it. And my experience is when people come and play on a team like the one you and I played on, the one Kendra and I run, or the one Bay and I are running at our next event, they're like, oh, that's not quite what I thought it was,
Yeah.
for better and for worse.
Hmm.
So before I go anywhere, would you say that is that kind of how your experience was, or were you like, oh, this is familiar, or like,
Yeah. You know what, Adam? I would venture to say, and I don't think I realized this until this very moment,
hmm,
I was not that interested in the conversation of leadership until I participated in the leadership team. Now I'm kind of obsessed with it. I think it is, I was always like, I might have been interested in it, but I didn't have a distinction or a context to work with that was really exciting to me.
yeah, it's kind of one of those buzzy words, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
we're like, I don't know about you, but for me, there's almost a should about it. Like we get so much messaging,
Mm-hmm.
at least the second you log on LinkedIn until the second you log off, and maybe other places too. But it's just
Mm-hmm.
constantly like, this is what a good leader does. You should blah, 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 leader. And like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's just sold a lot, I think, like that
Yeah.
notion. And
Yeah.
a lot of it,
Yeah.
go ahead,
And I
please.
think it's sold in the context of leadership is getting people to do what you want.
Yeah, but with
And
a sexier way of
yeah,
selling it to
yeah. And
people.
it's
Yeah.
like, that's why, that's sort of the buzzword. It's like, okay, leadership, leading your team to greatness because you want your team to help you achieve the goals that you want. And I think that's where it's falling short. And
Mm,
what I experienced with you is a type of leadership that is very sexy to me because it's the type of leadership that gets what you want by helping other people get what they want, by standing for people's greatness.
mm.
And what I have never seen done in the way that you did it before was a fierce love.
Yeah. Let's talk about more of that in a second. But first, so tell me what, like coming into this, Kendra, who I was kind of running the team with, she was a bit on her way out, but we reached out to
Mm-hmm.
you and some other people and we're like, hey, we're opening this up. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
come play with us. What had you say yes in the first place?
Well, I think there was so much of a yes in me with getting to be a part of it in any way.
Mm,
Um, but there was something in the way that you sent the email that first sparked that first interest of, oh, there's a different way to be a leader.
mm,
And it was when you sent out the email, and I think I shared this with you because I kind of wish that I could have received the email in two different ways just to have the contrasting experience to if you sent out the email, the invitation, and then, you know, as a part of it, here's this assignment that you need to do. And I wish I could have just received it like an assignment and just experienced that the way that other leaders do. This is a requirement. If you say yes to this, this is what I require of you.
Yeah.
But you did this, you know, you gave a context that was a game changer for me. It's like, even as I talk about it, I can feel this tingle and that's what being a leader is. It's really helping people see their potentiality and their significance and their power. And so you reminded me of it by saying, hey, there's 2 ways to do this assignment. The first is to do it as an assignment. If you do it as an assignment, you're going to get nothing more than, you know, relief from checking off.
Having done an assignment.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or if you do it with, you know, intentionality and thoughtfulness, you know, you can create a breakthrough right here in this situation, you know. And just the way that was presented was really, I think, a really good example of what this, you know, more empowered way of being a leader is to lead not by assigning and requiring and demanding, but illuminating, eliciting, you know, giving them the idea to consider their own greatness, their own potentiality, and their own possibilities.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, that's cool. It's
I totally got that. That's been just this one little thing that I took away. I've been doing that with all of my clients, and it's like, I love it. They're loving it. It's really great.
It's neat because we're kind of providing, well, it's like your first moment of leadership, isn't it? Like it's how you choose to be in the moment. And so here's something in front of you. Do you want to choose to be like just to get it out of your way? Do you want to choose to be blah? Like what's most going to open you up? It looks like can you hear me all right? It looks like our video is freezing on us.
I can hear you okay. Yeah, it is freezing every once in a while. But
awesome. Perfect. The video's a little choppy, but I think that'll either get fixed on the cloud or this will be an entire disaster, and we don't have to worry about that.
All is well.
Yes. Okay, cool. So, and I remember that well, actually, before we go down that path, what had been your experience? Like, you've been in leadership positions and done work like that and been led by people. Like, how would you describe your experience before this sort of, oh yeah, I know what it might look like. It might look like this stuff.
So I think what it was there was like leadership and there was coaching. And coaching is a form of, the way that I was experiencing coaching is a form of leadership, kind of your version in theory and concept. And I had different tactics and ways of doing it in coaching, in that coaching conversation. But I always in a kind of a one-on-one dialogue, and I could do it. I've had employees in different businesses, and I would choose to coach them rather than manage them. And that was very effective for me. But being able to do it in a context in group dynamic was always a bit challenging for me. And I've also, and it's something I tried to also teach entrepreneurs that I work with, how to be what I call the presence of leader, to teach it. I can teach the coaching tools and how to elicit greatness in that one-on-one, but I've never seen anybody do it in a group dynamic as brilliantly as I watched you do it. And because what you did is you applied the coaching theory into group leadership, which is a little bit different than I mean, you apply some coaching tactics in it, but there are some things that were some nuances that were a little bit different. And I'll be honest, I don't even really understand or have comprehended them fully because I only had that one experience of it. What I see, the way I see leadership being done outside of the coaching world, though, in organizations and in the entrepreneur world is, it makes perfect sense to me why, you know, over 50% of people in the US hate their jobs.
Yeah. So what do you see out there, and how would you like?
I see dictatorship. I see, I see, withholding, rewarding, punishing, blaming, shaming, threatening. That's what I see.
Yeah. I wonder if you've noticed this too. Like I also see the other side of it where it's kind of like so if that side you described is like all rigor and very little
Mhm.
love, the other
Mhm.
side is like all love and very little rigor. So it's like, oh, you get 1,000,001 chances and there's kind of like never any consequences. You just, oh, if it's the 58th time this person's shown up late to the meeting. And so we just acknowledge that that's Ron. It's late Ron.
Mhm.
Have
Mhm.
you ever
Mhm.
been around that kind of leadership or
Right.
were you more of the other side?
I see more of the other side is
Yeah.
more of the world that I mean, I work with a lot of, multi-million dollar businesses, and
Yeah. Rigor is a
that's
fuel that
more
runs
rigorous,
that a lot.
more
Yeah,
rigorous,
for
more in the
sure.
masculine. It's more of just the world I'm in. I mean, it's funny that you say that because my other world a lot has been yoga. And so I can see that, like, yeah. And I would say my method of leadership would be more of that, more of the passive, 1,000,001 chances.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't like that. I don't like the kind of discipline authoritarian. I think that that's very goes against my beliefs as a coach to really want to bring out the best in people.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that was one of the things that I really that I'm so appreciative of getting to work with you, is getting to see that even within my coaching, if you bring that leadership level to it, then you are serving more than pleasing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge too, isn't it? Because there's no like leadership is 80% love and 20% rigor, like except in the moment when what's required is 20% love and 80% rigor, or whatever it's whatever is required in the
It is
moment.
what is needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. And that was the distinction that I really walked away from our experience together is, the distinction is to serve rather than please.
Uh-huh.
And that was really powerful.
So one of the things I hold is kind of like in coaching, we're fine no matter how, it's like, hey, here's what you're doing. Here's what I notice. What do you want to do? And there's sort of no, it's fine however, right? If you want to hire me and then come have a conversation with me every week for the next year where you just say, I didn't do that thing I was going to do, I'll definitely do it this time. And then I know that you can just repeat that for a whole year if you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in leadership, it's more, I hold there's like more of a, I guess this is the part that's rigor, like more of a backstop. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm unattached. It's okay if you don't want to do that, but there's a requirement to being here. And so I'm going to need you to either take that on or to step off or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing coming into we had these calls leading up, and then there's sort of, we get into a circle or whatever. We meet up as a team, which is then when it really gets kind of real. And
Yeah.
so at that point, I'm guessing you kind of like, oh, this is cool. They've presented me this, let us know what you create from this. You can approach this one of two ways. You've got a bit of a sense,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just curious, like if there's any experience or like feeling or anything that kind of showed up for you once we started getting into the conversation I was leading and bringing.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything? There was everything. It's like there's so much that came up. I mean, it was just, I feel like that whole experience was just this, like, my eyes got bigger, my jaw dropped a couple of times, or a couple of moments where you started, talking and being that presence of leader very powerfully for somebody. And I remember the first time where you were leaning into somebody that was really, was a place I wouldn't have gone. I was like, holy shit. Am I okay to say that?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
By all
okay.
means.
I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit. I could feel myself getting uncomfortable. I could feel myself wanting to leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel myself, just like very concerned about where you were taking the group and what you were doing to this person, if you were going to traumatize them. And, I watched this, and I also, it was also the same types of things that I wish that I could say to people that I was, their leader, years in my life. And I did not say those things because I couldn't have stayed in my body. I couldn't have, I would have worried about them. I didn't have the presence to be able to say that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you said, as you were leaning into that person, I remember that you said this. You said, "Hey man, I'm saying this to you because I love you.
Mm.
And it would be so much easier for me to not bring this up to you right now." And quite honestly, I'd prefer to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I made a commitment to be a stand for your greatness. And in that moment, it was something shifted in me where it was where I really got it. I really got that. And all those years of all those things that I never said to people, I took accountability for in that moment. And in that moment made a commitment that I would stand for people's greatness that powerfully, that uncomfortably. I was more interested in serving rather than pleasing.
I love that.
I'll never forget that, Adam. I mean, that moment really changed me. I'm so appreciative.
The thing I love about you sharing like all the stuff that was going on for you is all that same stuff was going on for me in that moment too. Like, oh my God, am I going to traumatize this person? I mean, never really concerned that I was going to traumatize them, but certainly that like, that I was going to create a giant mess and that, they were going to think I was a dick and that everyone else was going to think I was a dick and all that stuff because their being was screaming, fuck off. Like, leave me alone. Let me be. And I think we're thinking about the same person. And what I remember was, wanting to leave them alone. This is a very effective strategy they have, but also being like, I've seen this person be left alone so many times. Like, this strategy works over and over and over again. And is it going to be one more iteration, or am I going to be the one that says, no, like, you're here for a reason. Let's actually move you past that. And that's I don't think unless someone had stood for me that way, I would be able to stand for someone else that way. And I really feel that's part of what we're trying to bring onto the leadership team is like kind of modeling for other people so that then they can bring that same like, oh, wow, I got it. It sucked and I hated you in the moment.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, everything's different. And then only from, having gone through the eye of the needle can we then support someone else to come through with us.
So true. So true. I really appreciate hearing you say that. Because I would not have guessed in that moment that all those things were going through you. Like, and I have internally judged myself for not being able to say that. And so I think that's really refreshing and really comforting too, to hear that, yes, you can be a stand for people's greatness. Yes, you can bring up those uncomfortable conversations for people, and you can be uncomfortable at the same time.
Yeah.
You can feel your humanness.
Sorry, what did you say?
You can be human.
Yeah. I think that's one of the places I see a lot of people get stuck in their leadership, and me especially, is I want to know like what's the right way to do it before I'll then do it. And then it looks great because I'm reliable to go and research the right way and then come back and be like, okay, I got the right way. And it's like, yeah, but we moved on. And that's just safe for you, Adam. I remember, I hated him so much. One of the people that really stood for my leadership. And he was like, so what do we do from here, Adam? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, great. I'm so glad you're here. I'll take an Adam that doesn't know over one that's got the answer figured out any day of the week. And I was just like, screw you, guy. So obnoxious. But I mean, that's kind of, for me at least, that's where my leadership lies, is in the not knowing and taking action.
Yeah. And I think there's also something, Adam, that, talking about needing to go through that eye of the needle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've also, and I have tried to have those conversations and done them unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
and made mess, like I have done that. And I think that is, I do think that, part of what makes a really good leader is being really coachable and willing to, and that's one of the things that I admire in you. And that one of the things I really respect about you is you're constantly in your work. You're constantly receiving coaching. You're constantly really willing to look inside and stand for your own greatness and call your own self out and put yourself on the hot seat, even and I think that's, my guess is that's one of the things that makes you such a powerful leader and able to do that for people. I can even see how I have, that's an edge that I want to play into more, because I can see that I like to back away from that. And so I even just kind of had that realization now, that because I don't think it's not a theory that you just say, oh, okay, I want to serve you more than please you. So, you're really being a victim about like the way you're talking about that. You don't just do it like that. It's not a theory. And then you just like bulldoze into it. There is that finesse that comes through going through that eye of the needle, getting coached yourself, doing your own work.
It's part of the challenge, isn't it? Because all of these things sound so sexy as sound bites. Serve rather than please. I'm standing for you because I love you. But saying I love you to someone and then punching them in the forehead is different than really, or even just saying, oh, I really get it and I really love you is much different than really staying heart open. And the challenge is that none of this stuff, like, I love how you put it, like, you can't just apply a theory. So much of this is in our being, and that exists in the experience in the moment. It's, I'm going to say this word wrong. It's phenomenological, I think is how we say that. So it's an experience in the moment, as opposed to like, so I guess what I'm taking from this is this video is useless and we can't describe this to people.
Yes, you got to join Adam's leadership team. That's the only way. You got to go through the needle, the eye of the needle. There's a Buddha quote that I think you'll like, that Buddha says that the only way that you can know something is through a direct experience. And the only way to have a direct experience is through the body, like through you have to actually experience it. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is that you do. Yeah. I mean, first it's a theory. The theory draws you to the experience. It's like, I think that's why we're doing this video, right? To help people kind of have an idea of like, oh, maybe that is something that I want to experience. And I think that's the point I want to offer to people, is that don't take the theory of it and then go stand for people's greatness by telling them how wrong they are. It's how, take the theory and then get into the experience, get into the practice of it, get coached, go through your work. And, and when you know it, that's when you can be that leader, that the being of it. Yeah. That's how it works. When you're the being of it, that's how it works. That's the finesse.
I really like that example you gave of like, I'm serving you, so I'm going to point out how you're wrong or whatever. I love it for many reasons, but the big one right now is because I was just supporting someone with this earlier today. And what was so funny about it was, as I was reading through their email and responding, so much of it mirrored conversations I'd had with my own coach, where like, oh, this is such a familiar response. And I know exactly what you're doing because I have stepped on that landmine myself many a time. And it is very challenging.
Yeah.
So what would you say you kind of, well, I guess two things I'm curious about, like what, if any, edges did you kind of cross as a result of being on this team? And maybe it's the same question, but like, what did you leave with?
Yeah. The edges that I crossed, well, there were two. The distinction that I never really realized until being a part of this team, that I was more interested in pleasing than serving. I didn't get it. I might have suspected it, but I didn't get it. I got it. I saw it. I got to experience it. And so that, I think maybe before it might've been a theory. And so it was outside of theory and embodied. And because of that, created that new interest in being more interested in serving. And the second one, I just had it. It left me. I'll come back to it. It'll come back to me because it was, what did I walk away with?
Well, while we wait for that to come, it'll come in its own time, or it won't, which is fine too. But part of what I think is really cool is we have these conversations and then you go and lead a group like right away. Mm-hmm. Whereas the safer way to, none of this is safe. First of all, like that's kind of our commitment, right? Is safe space, and then nothing of what we're doing is safe. It's all intended to get you outside of your comfort zone. But a safer approach is like, I go into this room surrounded by people who are all there to learn leadership. Yeah. Maybe there's a hot seat moment, but then it's like, okay, I'm going to go practice that in 3 months' time. Yeah. At which point I'll probably forget a little bit about it, and I'll still have conviction. But whereas here we kind of like start off there and then boom, off you go, sit down, lead these people, you get to practice right away. Yeah. Did you get a chance to do that? Like, did you, I'm not intending that like a softball question, but like, I'm curious, what did you get to practice with your people in this group?
And that reminded me of what the second thing was, because it was because of that. The idea of vulnerability in leadership was posed to me before. And I think I am one of the most vulnerable people you could possibly like meet. I am an open book. I've teach yoga teacher trainings. I get all mushy and gushy and I talk about my past and my addiction and my recovery and all the messes that I've made. I'm an open book with all of that. Yeah. And it wasn't until being a part of this team and going in to try to practice vulnerability in leadership to like, here's what I'm being vulnerable with. And I do this in a leadership. And I remember coming to you at the event and saying, this is this concept. I don't get it. Cause because see, what I was doing before, the vulnerability and leadership that I was doing before was a pseudo vulnerability, and it was vulnerability to serve my ego. Because I would tell you all about my recovery and the messes that I made, because they had a solution and they had an answer, and they were going to serve you and they're going to make me look good.
They're now like resolved, kind of.
They're resolved. Yeah. So that's not vulnerability. I mean, part of it makes me maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but that's not true vulnerability. And what I learned, this whole vulnerability in leadership is to, show my unresolved issues right now, that I'm really human right now, that even as I talk about this stuff and, I can feel my ego saying, shh, be quiet, don't tell them that. And, and to use that. And so, and I'll be honest, here's me being vulnerable right now, is I don't even have that figured out. I just realized that I still have a lot to learn with vulnerability and leadership. I'm not as vulnerable as I thought I was. And so that planted a seed for me that I was able to getting to work with it in the small groups there and lead on the leadership team revealed for me. I got to practice it. I got to see how completely out of practice I was with it. I mean, it was so messy. It was so terrible doing it, but it was wonderful to get to practice it and to see that mirror of myself. And then I've been able to take that home in working with my clients and leading my own events to, experiment with it a little bit here and there. But I remember bringing this to you because I'm still not 100% clear on this. But I was even more unclear, and I came to you and I said, Adam, I don't understand. Like, here's me being vulnerable. Like, here's my vulnerability right now. And my vulnerability is that, I'm having this major imposter syndrome coming up, and I'm, doubting my own effectiveness as a coach and blah, 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 and leading a team. how is that going to go to, how am I supposed to go and be vulnerable with this, with my team? I don't understand how that's really going to serve them.
Right.
Do you remember what you said to me?
Vaguely, but perhaps do you remember what I said?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. You told me that vulnerability and leadership is this separate thing. And there's a distinction around, vulnerability and being a leader and how we do it.
Mm.
I think you told me a little bit, like you probably said it more eloquently. You probably had a more polished nugget of wisdom, because this was me like taking it in like this and like sitting with it. I'm still sitting with it, but that's part of the beauty of it, is that, that's been an awesome takeaway, because you didn't hand it to me in this polished, like, here's your answer, there you go.
Right.
You handed it as like, here's a seed, an idea, go play with it, go try it on.
I think it was, if memory serves correct, it was probably something along the lines of like this notion of, there's the vulnerability where it's already resolved, which isn't vulnerability, right? It's that's the kind of vulnerability that most people post on social media, where it's like, this is really vulnerable, and then there's the sad story of their past, and now the story of how they're a billionaire. Oh, we've got a guest. Now they're a billionaire, and it's like, hey, great work moving beyond your your past, but it's not really vulnerable. It's a great story. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other side of the equation, where it's just like, here's a mess, and people are left with something they feel they need to take care of. And then
that was it. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's the kind of like, whereas a leader, I would call it like one. Do you have to take care of anything, or
no.
Okay, great. We won't be too much longer.
Yeah.
There's that idea of like what I would call leading from the breakdown, like leading from our own, I don't have this figured out, the stuff I'm still developing the path forward, and being able to lead and be vulnerable and share that without people then having to be like, oh my God, do I have to take care of Demi? How do I solve this for her?
Yes.
Which is the other extreme I find people often go to, where we're like, is this person all right? It's more like a fire hose, just where, here's a bunch of emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like, I sense that. I can sense that. I like, and I maybe let me know what you think about this, but I think when I think about a powerful leader being vulnerable, mm-hmm. it's a vulnerability that has a sense of, yes, Betty, you can't have the Mexican leftovers. It's a sense of, I don't have this figured out.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable. This is scary for me right now, but I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And I have faith, and so this is like there's an optimism in it, that salted and peppered with the realness of like fear and doubt and the humanness. But there's this faith and trust, and like, and I think that's what makes that vulnerability so delicious for us that are being, led mm-hmm. by that leader. Because what it says to me when I see a leader do that with, their faith and their hope and their trust and their but yet their fear and their doubt, is that I can also step forward in that same way. I can also have my own fear and doubt and insecurity and still move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And that's the only way I can move forward, because that's what you come with a whole of you. There's just no way around doing it, So when the leader that leads that is all polished and perfect, and I think that I can't move forward until I'm polished and perfect, I'm never going to step forward, because I'm never going to be polished and perfect.
Yeah. Or all we're going to do is work inside of our comfort zone, which is like, nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's not where a man has landed on the moon. It's not where, whatever impossible goal is created, because
that's what you just said. Yes, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, or we'll work within our comfort zone. And that's it. And I don't want to work in my comfort zone. I mean, I want to work in my comfort zone. That's what I really want. Right.
Yeah, totally.
But I want the magic that comes from, landing on the moon. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe another way to put it is like we all want that comfortable, it feels good, but what you're committed to is something beyond that. And like something
Yes.
beyond the feeling good
Yes.
temporarily of, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else that you want to say or even ask about any of that before we wind down? That's kind of all. I think that gives like a really beautiful picture of kind of like some of the experience.
Oops, are you there?
Before we finish.
Are you there? Can you hear? You
I'm
froze
still
up.
here.
Can you hear me?
Did you hear what I said? Yeah, I've got an unstable internet.
Okay. I know. See, we work in physical reality. Things are unpredictable.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I am kind of curious, and I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I think I love and I crave more of the conversation of this idea of leadership. I have it, man. I love the idea of more leaders in the world, out in corporate America, leading with this style and, man, standing for people's greatness in a way that is, truly serving with compassion and authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear like what, I don't even know what your offers are and what, like how does one like develop this type of leadership?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'll do my best to answer it while simultaneously probably falling on my face because I don't have that figured out.
You're gonna model the vulnerability for me.
Yeah, totally. It's hot in here. This is part of what I'm trying to figure out as I go. So I do believe anytime we coach someone one-on-one, it develops their ability to be more of an owner of the entirety of their life. Like, oh, my relationship is breaking down. How can I own that as opposed to just blame my partner for it? Yeah. And the more we can own, the more we have the power to change. And the more we have the power to change, the more power we have just as a human living.
Yeah.
But as you pointed to, like, leadership's a bit of a different thing. And part of leadership is there's something we're committed to creating. There's like the generation of a result. Yeah. Whereas just when we're coaching someone, they may not actually have a result. In fact, a lot of coaching is resultless. It's just like, well, what's showing up now? Well, this jerk cut me off in traffic. Yeah. So that's kind of where Bay and I are starting, is with this idea of we're putting on an intensive and there is a result. That result is we run the intensive and we support people in actually creating, a powerful experience. Mm-hmm. And we create a container, which is like the logistics, right? Like the beautiful thing about developing leadership is that we can reflect and work with your leadership, even in the way you show up to a call 5 minutes late, or the way that you kind of get on the call and say, oh, by the way, I have to leave in 10 minutes. And mm-hmm. everyone's like, well, how come we didn't know that? How would it be if Martin Luther King had said, I have a dream and I'm going to tell you about it, but I do have to leave 10 minutes early. And I apologize about that, but don't worry, this is a really powerful dream. I feel like a bit lacking in the leadership, kind of takes away from who you're being.
Yes. Yes.
So honestly, I don't know. This is where we're kind of starting from. So we've been learning from the last 7 years or so. It has been me having my leadership developed in the program that I've shared with you, Accomplishment Coaching. And then that was, I don't know how long ago. And then the sort of 4 years before now, we're with Rich Litvin and kind of slowly building something there. And now we're pushing our boat off from the dock and kind of starting to create something. And honestly, I think part of it is going to be just building it as we go. And very hopefully not embarrassing ourselves.
Embarrass yourselves. Go for it.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah.
If we don't embarrass ourselves, we're not doing it right.
Well, that's so cool. I love the idea of you guys doing that. And I hope you'll keep me posted on when that is, because I would love more information on that. You did help me think of one really other cool takeaway I forgot about until you brought that up. One of my favorite takeaways is the idea of realizing your impact, and that you're able to do that in a group. What you were talking about, that was something that you kept bringing up for people, what do you think that impact is, and positive and negative. And that has been so powerful for me. I've used with clients, I've given to them, but I start use that on my kids. I like had the most amazing conversations with them. I took them on the 3 older kids on a vacation, and the way they were fighting was impacting me. So I brought them each in the room and I had this conversation with them. It was the most beautiful conversation, talking first universal about how sometimes we don't realize the impact that our choices has on people. And, you know, and I modeled, you saying, I'm having this conversation because I love you. And, I just want to let you know, I'm not going to ask you to change your behavior. I just want to let you know how it's impacting me, and be intentional with what you choose.
Yeah.
And it was the most delicious conversation. It was a conversation that I didn't have to blame them or make them wrong. It created more bonding and love in our relationship. And this is my stepkids. And so that is a conversation we need more bonding. And so I think that is something really powerful that I got to learn from you in leadership. I love that concept of realizing your impact on people and helping as a leader. I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do as a leader, is help others realize their significance in realizing the impact that they have when they show up, don't show up 10 minutes late, or, how their presence is significant enough to impact the group dynamic.
I love that. It's, and in this day and age, we're always more and more removed, like that, ghosting is such a big thing these days, because that's easier than having to be present to my impact as I tell the person I actually don't enjoy being in a relationship with you, or, whatever it is. Easier just to didn't show up. I don't have to feel any of the heartbreak that I'm creating. And
yes.
So that's cool.
Ooh, I like that. Ghosting versus impact, realizing. I love those too. That was actually a huge takeaway. I think those 3 things, that vulnerability and leadership, the conversation of impact, and serving versus pleasing. Those are just like gems for me.
Love it. Demi, I think that is perfect. Thanks so much for sharing all of that stuff.
My pleasure.
It's cool. It's neat to get to it. I also appreciate you sharing, because I'm like, oh, cool. I get to be present to my impact. I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't realize that's pretty cool.
It's the water you swim in. You don't realize that. It's
exactly.
Really cool. You impacted me significantly, Adam. I'm very appreciative. So.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks everyone for watching. And then you just hang tight for 1 sec, Demi.
Okay.